At the beginning, a deranged man is at a facility making a sketch on the wall. Behind him are some men watching him. They are looking for someone, and the sketch was the location of where the person lived. When he was done, he fell unconscious, and on the wall was a sketch of Trieste, Italy. Michel Silenzi cycles to school in Trieste, Italy. On his way, he sees a Spider-Man costume that he wanted to buy for a Halloween party that night, but he was told that he couldn't buy it, and he leaves dejectedly. At school, he sits behind his crush Stella, and he records a video of her, but his teacher sees him doing this and takes his phone. Just then, a police officer comes in. She was there to inquire about the disappearance of one of their classmates who had run away from home. Before she leaves, she walks up to Michel and gives him his lunch. She was Giovanna, his mother. He's embarrassed by this, as his classmates, especially his bullies, Ivan and Brando, make fun of him. Michel ignores them and goes back to his test. But just then, his nose starts to bleed. He goes to the bathroom, and while he's in there, the bell rings for the close of the day. He quickly hides in one of the bathroom stalls, and Ivan and Brando come to the bathroom to look for him. They break the door and drag him out. They take his money from his shoe where he'd hid it, and Ivan hits him on the belly with his paint gun. Then they chase him down the hallway and shoot him with the paint gun, embarrassing him in front of the whole school. He goes home feeling depressed about the whole incident. At home, his sister Candela tried to make small talk with him, but he wasn't interested. He sends Stella a friend request on Facebook, and he checks his old box and takes the last cash he had in it. He goes to an old creepy store to get a cheap costume. The attendant gives him an old lousy costume and tells him that it was the costume of a Chinese superhero. Even though he didn't like it, he buys it anyway. Later that night, Giovanna arrives home to find him looking deflated. She asks him why he wasn't at the party, and he tells her that he didn't want to go because he hated his costume. She tells him that the costume was okay and that he was a superhero. She encourages him to go, as it was Stella's party, and he goes. At the party, Stella comes to him, and the two of them strike up a conversation. Brando comes over and makes fun of his costume, but Stella tells him that she likes it. Brando draws everyone's attention to a video of Stella on the TV. It had been recorded without her consent, and he and Ivan tell everyone that they'd gotten the video from Michelle's phone when it had been taken by the teacher. Stella is mad about this, and everyone turns on Michel. They chase him menacingly, and he runs upstairs to get away from them. They start to bang on the door, and out of frustration, he wishes that he was invisible. Just then, the light goes out, and when the light came back on, he was gone. Invisible? No. Rather, he was outside holding on to the window frame. He jumps down and rushes home. The next morning, he wakes up to his dog staring at him weirdly. He goes to the bathroom to bathe and brush his teeth, and when he looks at the mirror, he's shocked to see only his robe. His face and body was invincible. His mom came into the room and she couldn't see him even though he was standing in the room. He quickly writes a note telling her that he'd left for school early, and he surreptitiously drops it on the bed. Later, he drapes himself in a lot of clothes and he cycles to school. He watches everyone from a distance, and when he sees Ivan, he gets an idea. He takes off his clothes and he walks to school naked and invisible. In class, he takes Ivan's paint gun and he shoots at the teacher with it. He quickly drops the gun on Ivan, and everyone thinks Ivan has done it, getting him in serious trouble. Later, he goes to the teacher's office and he rewrites his test with the teacher's score sheet. Then he goes to Brando while he's playing an important game of lawn tennis, and he makes him lose, making his dad extremely mad at him. Later, he sees some girls going into the bathroom, and he follows them there and watches them while they undress. Just then, a girl throws a towel and it lands on him, making his figure visible. All the girls were surprised to see the shape of a person, and in that moment, his invisibility starts to wear off, and he becomes visible. The girls scream when they see him in their dressing room naked. They report him to the principal, and his mom comes over to take him home. She's surprised and worried about his recent behavior, and she takes him out for lunch. The next day in class, a police psychologist named Basili comes to talk to the students about mental health issues. He tells them that Brando was now missing, and just like the first boy, he'd also left a message that he was running away from home. Everyone makes fun of Michel for what had happened the previous day. Even Stella was mad at him, and this makes him even more reclusive. Just then, he starts to become invisible, and thankfully, the bell rings. He covers himself and bolts out of class. He rushes home and goes to his room. He sees his sister there, and he yells at her to leave as he hides himself from her. A suspicious Candela pretends to leave, and when he turns around, she's shocked to see him, or rather not see him. She screams in fear, but he eventually calms her down and tells her how he became that way. At the police station, Basili tells the rest of the cops that he thinks the kids are just being rebellious, as is normal for teenagers, and his only worry was for the other kids not to follow the same footsteps. Giovanna is a bit hesitant to believe that it's that simple, but Basili points to the messages that they leave for their family, making it clear that they'd not been kidnapped. Later when she gets home, she looks for Michel around the house, but she couldn't find him as he was invisible and didn't want her to see him. She gets in a call with her mom, and Michel listens in on the conversation. She tells her mom that she's worried about his recent behavior and wonders if it was because his father had died or if he'd found out that he was adopted. Michel is shocked to hear this. He leaves the house and goes to a beach and sits on a swing. Coincidentally, Stella shows up and sees the swing moving, like there was someone on it. For whatever reason, this doesn't scare her, and she walks up and sits on the other swing. She wonders if she was crazy, and she asks if the invisible person was a ghost or an angel. But Michel draws a smiley face emoji on the sand, and the two of them swing for a bit. When they were done, she asks if they could be friends, and Michel tells her that he didn't mind. He's happy about this. After she leaves for practice, Michel sees a man staring at him from a distance, even though he was invisible. The man walks away using a stick. He was blind. The next day at school, Michel apologizes to Stella for his recent behavior, and she tells him that she wasn't mad at him. Even though she didn't realize that he's the invisible boy, he's happy when he sees her draw the smiley face on her book. Later that night, he goes to her house, and he draws the smiley face on her window. She's happy to see this, and she lets him in. The two of them talk for a bit, but he doesn't reveal himself to her. She covers him with a blanket and they kiss under the sheets. Just then, he starts to become visible again, and he runs off. When he gets home, his sister encourages him to tell Stella the truth, and he makes his way to her gymnastics class, where she was training that night. At practice, she couldn't quite concentrate, and her mother, who was also her trainer, leaves for a few minutes to get a drink. While she's alone, a masked man shoots her with a dart, making her fall unconscious, and he carries her outside. Outside, Michel sees this as he arrives, and he tries to stop the man, but there wasn't much he could do, and the man eventually leaves with Stella in his truck. When the police arrive, Giovanna's fears are confirmed. The children were being kidnapped. She encourages Michel, and they leave for home. Stella wakes up in a strange facility where some tests are being carried out on her. When they're done, they take her to a cell, and there she meets the two boys that had been kidnapped, and they bond over their predicament. The next day, Michel finds that his mom had washed his costume, and it had shrunk. He's mad about this as he couldn't wear it anymore, and he couldn't get invisible without it, or save his friends. He gets Candela to wear it, but she doesn't get invisible, and he's even more pissed about this. He goes to his mom and confronts her for ruining his costume. He also tells her that she's not his mom, and he yells at her. His scream shatters the glass behind her, and she's equally shocked and heartbroken by this. He goes to the beach, and there the blind man who'd been staring at him the other day came to him. He tells Michel that the costume had only helped him open his mind, and it had nothing to do with his powers. The man answers Michel's questions before he even asks them, and he tells him that he could read minds. The man reveals that his name is Deranged, and he is Michel's biological father. Michel is shocked by this and doesn't believe him. Then Deranged tells his story. He was born and raised in Russia and had been a normal man until a devastating nuclear radiation killed a lot of people and made a few of them mutants, giving them supernatural abilities like flight, elasticity, mind reading, etc. They were called the Specials. They were all captured by the government and taken to a secret military facility called the Division, where they were all studied to be used as weapons. They were all used to breaking points, and they all started to develop some serious side effects. The more they used their powers, the weaker they got in other areas. For Deranged, this meant slowly losing his eyesight, and for others, it was something else. Another side effect was that they were all impotent. All except Andrei and Yelena. Michelle's real mom. The two of them procreated and Michelle was born. The couple decided to run away, but the division pursued them, catching up with Yelena and killing her. While Andrzej ran away with Michelle, realizing that the child could never be safe with him, he left baby Michelle on Giovanna's doorstep after reading her mind and seeing that she was a good woman who wanted a child. Now that the division knew that Michelle was alive and lives in Trieste, they were kidnapping children and testing them so as to find him. Michelle is surprised to hear this story, and he asks Andrzej if he could just read anyone's mind. And Andrzej tells him that he could if the person was in close proximity to him, like the fisherman who was near them. He tells Michelle that the man was contemplating on calling the police because of the recent cases of child kidnapping. Meanwhile, Giovanna is worried as she hadn't heard from Michelle since the incident that morning. Basili comes to console her, and she tells him what had happened that morning and how worried she is about his recent behavior and outburst. He's equally shocked as he had no idea that Michelle wasn't Giovanna's biological child. Just then, a detective comes in and tells them that a young boy was reported seen with a strange man walking around. At the dock, Andrea gives Michelle a suit and tells him that he should wear it under his clothes. The suit was made of a material that also gets invisible when he is invisible, and he tells Michelle that it's his mother's gift to him. After that, he wipes the fisherman's memory and he leaves. The police arrive and question the fisherman, but he tells them that he doesn't remember anything, not even making the call. Basili offers to take Michelle home, and Giovanna agrees. At home, he makes Michelle a cup of tea, and Michelle realizes that Basili was in fact the same person who had kidnapped Stella, and he wasn't a good person. He gets invisible and tries to escape, but Basili goes after him. He manages to escape and runs outside the house. He sees his bully Ivan on his motorcycle, and he asks him to drive. Ivan was both scared and perplexed because an invisible person was talking to him. But after some hesitation, he eventually drives and takes him to a place where they were safe. Michelle reveals himself to him, and Ivan is equally shocked and impressed. Michelle tells him what was going on, and he learns that Ivan suffers from ADHD. Giovanna arrives at the house and sees that the whole place has been trashed. Just then, Andre shows up. Meanwhile, at the facility, the boys make a human ladder for Stella to climb out with. Outside, she sees that they were on a shipping dock, and she climbs up, all the while hiding from the guards. At the top, she sees an old man in a room who looked like he was also kidnapped, and she feels sorry for him. She climbs to the top of the searchlight, and she draws the smiley face on it and turns on the light. At a distance where Michelle and Ivan were bonding and brainstorming on their whereabouts, Michelle saw the smiley face in the sky, and he knew that it was a signal from Stella. He and Ivan get on the motorcycle, and they follow the light to the location. Just then, the guards catch up with Stella, and they turn off the light and take her back to the cell. Ivan shoots at an electrical outlet and causes a temporary malfunction, while invisible Michelle goes inside the building. Inside, he sees Basili and some men watching Andrzej and Giovanna as they drive to the location. Basili leaves with some of his men, and Michelle uses a cylinder to knock out one of the guards. He then takes a gun and threatens the other guard to open the bunker where Stella and the boys were held. Then he makes them go inside the bunker and locks them there. He reveals himself to Stella and the boys, and they're surprised. The boys want them all to leave, but Stella tells them about the man she'd seen before and asks the boys to leave while she and Michelle go rescue the man. The two boys leave, and Stella leads the way to the man. She takes him to a submarine, and in there was the older man and a bunch of guards. And then she turns around and points a gun at Michelle, revealing that she had been working with the man and Basili. She suddenly loses consciousness and passes out. The older man reveals that he was the mastermind of it all. He tells Michelle that his name is Claw, and he had the ability to control the mind and body of anyone he touched, making them do whatever he wanted. He'd been the one controlling Basili and Stella. Everything Stella and Basili had been doing was unknown to them. Michelle gets invisible, and he tries to fight them, but the old man threatens to kill Stella, so he stops. He asks the guards to fire up the submarine, and they do that and detach into the water below. They rig the facility to blow up in a few seconds, and he tells Michelle that he would send Stella back to the surface in a pod. Giovanna and Andre arrive at the dock, and they see Ivan. They saw that the two boys were trapped in the building and that it was going to blow up in no time, and they quickly rescued them. They also rescued Basili after Andrzej read his mind to find that he was innocent and had no idea of what the older man had made him do. She tries to go inside to look for Michelle and Stella, but Andrzej tells her that they aren't in the facility anymore. The facility explodes right after they leave. Thankfully, they were all safe. Inside the submarine, the older man tells Michelle that he was taking him to his mother, Yelena. Michelle didn't believe him. Andrzej had told him that his mother was dead. But the older man tells him that she was alive and well and was expecting to see him. They put Stella in the pod and they're about to close it. But just then, she starts to regain consciousness and she calls Michelle, and this triggers his telekinesis power, and he starts destroying the place, sending everyone into a frenzy and defeating the men and the older man. He gets in the pod with Stella and they both go out to the surface. Out on the surface, everyone is happy as all the kids had been rescued and everyone was safe. Michelle shows off his power to everyone, and they're all shocked. Andrzej tells him that he would have to erase everyone's memories because it was unsafe for them to know about his abilities. Michelle grudgingly obliges, and he kisses Stella one last time. Life returns back to normal, albeit with a weird gap in the collective memories of everyone who had been involved in the whole matter. Even Giovanna couldn't remember how she'd rescued the children, but she was happy to get credit for it. The scene then shifts to somewhere in Russia where we see a guard reporting to an invincible person. It is Yelena, Michelle's mother, who was thought to be dead. She is now the head of the division, and she was the one who sent those people to get Michelle. The guard reveals to her that even though they'd lost Michelle, they'd found the whereabouts of his twin sister Natasha, and she was in Morocco. The scene shifts to a clip of the past, and there we learn that Andrzej had actually run off with 2 children that day. So that'd do it for now. Stay tuned for part 2. Like and subscribe for more videos like this, and please let us know what you think in the comment section. Till next time, stay safe and take care.